guys, I'm Emily with More to Me Designs and welcome back to our final video of the Are You Game Puzzle Mystery Quilt through Cotton Cuts. We are on clue number 10 and this is the most exciting time because we're about to put together our entire quilt. So there's a lot of steps here, so we're just going to take them slowly and step by step and go through this together. So I have all my directions here. The pieces in this pack are right here, so just make sure you have everything that you should have for this month. And then what we'll do is we'll get started. I'll probably end up doing this video in a few parts. So if you see me have an outfit change, that's because it is a lot. So we're gonna just do this step by step, take our time. So we should have all of our clues that we have done organized by the month that they sent them. And then they should be all labeled. So this should be fairly easy for us. We're basically just gonna follow each step. Take the clues that they tell us to put together and then make our quilt topper. So we should have something that looks like this at the very end, and I'm so excited to see it all put together. So let's get started. Okay, for our first steps, we're going to be using sections 8A, 8B, and 5A. So if you have kind of your pile of previous clues in front of you, and organize them by like the month that they were sent to us. So if you need to find sections 8A and 8B, you would pull clue number 8, and that's where you'll find them labeled in there. That's easier for you guys to find them. So for example, we need 5A as well, so I went to month number 5, pull them out of there. So very easy to find. They made this very easy for us. So went ahead and I have them all labeled. So we're going to be connecting these 3 pieces together, and we'll be making 2 of these. So we're just going to take one of our 8A, and then we're going to put 8B in the middle, and then we're going to take 5A and put it on the right side. So you should have a long piece that looks like this. And when we sew these together, we're just going to be doing a 1/4 inch seam allowance like we've done throughout the entire quilt. And we should have 2 of these. So, and you'll start to see the patterns go together as well. And that is what they should look like. So I'm going to go ahead and get the first piece sewn together, show you what that looks like, and then we'll make our second one. All right, so I just sewn those 3 clues together. So you should have something that looks like this, which is already looking so awesome. And then you have to press your seam allowances towards 8B, which is the middle piece. So just go ahead and make sure you're pushing your seam allowances towards the center. And we'll go ahead and we'll do the exact same thing with our remaining 3 pieces. And then we're already done with step 1. So not so bad, guys, right? It looks a little overwhelming at first, but it's not bad. All right, guys, so once you have those 2 clues put together, it should measure at 20 inches wide and 6.5 inches tall. We can go ahead and put those to the side. Those are finished for right now. What we're going to be working on next is pieces 8C and section 2C. So I'm going to go back to my pack that has the number 8. And if you forgot to label your pieces or anything like that, you can see on the direction sheet exactly what it looks like, sections 8C. They were the ones that look a lot like these end pieces here, except we added, or these middle pieces, except we added an additional little rectangle on the top. So those are your 8C pieces, so we'll pull those out, and then we're gonna get into pack number 2 and get our pieces out for 2C. So let me go ahead and get these all out and ready, and we will put together our next step. Wow, guys, this is so fun taking out these clues and laying them together to see how these fabrics are all going together. This quilt is just going to be so cool when it's all done. I'm so pumped. Okay, so this is going to be just one. Last time we made 2 identical pieces. We're only making 1 on this step. So the middle piece is going to be your 2C piece, and then on each side you should have an 8C. So basically we're going to mirror them. So we're going to put 1 on each side, and you should have your C little rectangle on the outer sides, and you should have your D and A fabrics in the middle touching your little square that we made here. So what we're going to do is just make a strip like we did the last time. We're going to put them right sides together, do a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then go ahead and sew to the other side as well. And when we're done, we're going to be pressing towards the middle fabric, or the middle piece, just like we did with our last clue. So let's go ahead and get that sewn together, and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, so that piece is all together. Look how pretty that is. All right, so this should also measure the same as the other 2 pieces that we just did, 20 inches wide, 6.5 inches tall. So what we're going to be doing on step 3, it looks overwhelming, but I promise you it's not. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to leave this piece right in the middle, and we're going to add the first clue that we put together this month. We're going to put one on the bottom and one on the top. Let's take those 2, and you're going to see the pattern will come together. But then they also want you to grab pieces 7B. You should have 2 of them, and they want you to put one on each side. This is where you're just going to want to pay attention. So you can see on the directions here, they want the C fabric, like the C triangles that are in this little section right here. Pay attention to that. They want those to be what touches this big square that we're going to create. So when we put them in, this is my C fabric. So I'm going to make sure that those are on the inside. And same here, C fabric, make sure that's what's on the inside. So make sure it's not the other way around. We don't want the E fabric touching. We want the C. So that's what it's going to look like when it's all sewn together. Won't get ahead of ourselves though. Let's go ahead and put 7B to the side for now. Let's go ahead and connect this big piece. So I'm going to go ahead and take them right sides together, and we're going to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance along this entire strip. And then when we open it up, we're going to be pressing towards the outside fabric when we're finished with that. And then we're going to go ahead, add the bottom piece, same thing, press towards the outside fabric. So let's go ahead and get this big chunk sewn together, and then we'll add our sides. All right, so I got my top half all sewn, so I just wanted to show you guys that before I added the bottom. So it looks like this, and you should have your points match up on each corner right there. And then on the back, you're pressing your seam allowances towards the middle. This will probably be your trickiest part. It's a really big piece. What helps is when your pieces are already like right sides together, take your iron and give that a good press, because when you push it over, it's going to be a lot easier to press that seam allowance towards whatever direction you're trying to go, which should be this middle piece. So this is what it looks like with the top. So we're going to go ahead and add the bottom. My other best advice for you is really just take your time, because when you're going through and you're sewing, all of these seam allowances have been pressed towards certain areas for a reason, for the quilt to come together smoothly. So when you're sewing, just make sure that everything remains flat and the seam allowances remain the directions that we've pressed them originally and where they should be going. So just every now and then when you're sewing, just lift it up and look on the bottom half to make sure everything's laying nice and flat, and then you should have no problems. So I'm going to go ahead and add the bottom piece, and then I'll show you what that looks like when it's done. All right, guys, and sorry for the last step, I meant to say press towards outside, not middle. I was still reading off from, in my brain, the last step where we press towards the middle, but no, for the big piece, I'm sorry, you're pressing towards the outside. So that's what we have here. So we have our strip in the middle, and if you look, your seam allowances are pressed towards the outside. So that's what this big chunk looks like, and you're already going to get an idea of what our quilt is going to look like, and I am already so obsessed. All right, so what we're going to do next is we're going to add our strips to the outside pieces. So we should have the pieces that have like the little strips of C. Make sure that those are on the right and left side and not the top and bottom. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to add our strips to the side, and remember what I said in the previous step, make sure that the C triangles that are right here are what is touching the inside of your piece, not the E triangles. We don't want this, we want this, because we want to make sure everything lines up in the future. All right, and so those should line up perfectly after you have everything sewn together. So we're just going to go ahead and put them right sides together, and we'll do 1/4 inch seam allowance, And then when we're all done with those, we're going to be pressing towards the outside for these as well. So go ahead and get these sewn on, and then we can be done with this sheet and move on to our next step. Look at this. Oh my gosh, I'm so stinking excited. I'm speechless already, and I'm not even done with it. I'm just like, all the colors going together so well. I am so excited. All right, so now that I'm done basking in just one small piece, it's going to be a big quilt. We are going to put this to the side for now, and we're going to be working with our longer C pieces on here, and we're going to be working with section 2A and then 2B. So we're going to be pulling those out, and we're also, let's grab section 4B as well, and we'll put those in front of us. We're going to be making 2 identical pieces of this, and when they're done, we're just going to be adding them to the top and bottom of this big piece that we just created. So it's going together very smoothly, guys. It looks so overwhelming. I'll be honest, I had not done this very much. Quilting is definitely new to me, but Cotton Cuts has just made this so simple. And so it looks overwhelming, but honestly, the way they put the steps by steps, they're geniuses. So they do a great job. So I think this should go together nice and smoothly. So let's go ahead and put this to the side, grab the next pieces we need, which are 2A, 2B, and 4B, and we'll create our next clues. All right, guys, so we should have pulled out our 2A, 2B, and 4B clue pieces. So I have them labeled here. So we're going to be joining them in a strip just like this. So we're going to want 2A on the left, 4B on the right, and we'll put 2B right in the middle. 2A and 4B should look identical except mirrored, and then 2B should just be these little strips. So we're going to go ahead and make a long strip here twice. So I'm going to go right sides together, 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then we'll add the other side. When we're pressing our seam allowances for these, we're going to be pressing them towards the outside. Press to the left, plus to the right. So I'm going to go ahead and get these sewn, and I'll show you what the back looks like, and then we're going to add our strips. All right, so our sewn together strip should look like this, and where we join them down here, we should have our seam allowances pressed towards the outside. So you can see them here and here. So we have them all pressed, and now we're going to go ahead and add our next pieces. So we're going to go ahead, put them right sides together, 1/4 inch seam allowance, repeat the same thing that you just did for this strip, and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, so now that we have our 2 strips made, these should measure out to be 26 inches wide and 7.5 inches tall. That's going to be after we add our strips. So the strip should at least be 26 inches wide. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 2 of the strips that they sent us this month. So you're going to see that they're going to be a little bit long. They do this on purpose because with strips, they just want to make sure that it's accurate and it's easy, so they give you a little bit of wiggle room. We'll trim them at the end. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put 1 on the top and 1 on the bottom. And we're going to go ahead and I'm actually going to press these strips. They've been folded in the bag, so get them pressed. And we're just going to add a strip to the top and bottom of each of these clues. Add a 1/4 inch seam allowance, trim our excess, and then they should come out to be the 7.5 inches tall after our strips are added. So go ahead, get those ironed nice and flat. What I would suggest is making it so there's an even amount left over on each end, folding them right sides together, and then take your clips and pin in the middle first. And like lay them nice and flat. Work from the middle out. And put 1 on the end. And this should give you a nice clean finish when you have them all sewn. Okay, I'm going to take that to the sewing machine. I'm going to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then when that's done, I'll be pressing my seam allowance towards the outside. So the seam allowance will be laying behind this, this long C strip here. So let's go ahead and get that sewn, and then we'll add the bottom, and we'll just repeat our steps for the next strip we have here. Alright, so I have a strip looking like this now. The most important thing I have to say when sewing these together is there is a lot of seam allowances pressed back here, so you really just have to make sure while you're sewing this strip together and as you're going, you're making sure, like I've said before, that everything is remaining pressed the same direction that we intended it to be, and that you're not like sewing over these and anything's getting like stuck the wrong way, because then it's just not going to lay as flat or as nice, and you're going to be a little bit more frustrated. So just pay attention to that as you go. So I'm going to go ahead and cut off the excess length that we have here. Let me get a straight edge, make sure it's nice and neat. Cotton Cut's really thought of everything with adding excess length, because that can definitely be something that can be more frustrating than it needs to be. You always want to have too much and not enough. And make sure everything's nice and straight. So we're going to go ahead and repeat the same thing, but we're going to just add our strip to the bottom now. And then we'll repeat the same exact step with the next 2 strips. So I'm going to get these completed, show you what they look like all done, and then we're going to add them to the large portion that we just completed. So let me finish these up and I'll show you what they look like. Alright guys, so I cleared my table off a little bit so that I could kind of display it towards you guys to see what we're working with next here. So we're on step number 9. We're going to be joining the 2 rectangle pieces that we made to the top and bottom of this large piece that we made. So make sure that you're adding it to the top and bottom of where we added these beautiful little rectangles on each side. So that that will show you, you know, what angle we're going to. You'll also see that if you try to do it on this side, obviously it's far too large. So the side that matches up perfectly is the sides we're adding our pieces to. So we're going to be doing a 1/4 inch seam allowance right sides together, and we're going to be pressing towards the outside. So when this is all done, this section should measure at 26 inches wide and 32 inches tall. And this will complete the center section of our quilt. So that's really, really exciting. This is going to be kind of the middle of our quilt when it's all done. So it's coming together beautifully. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to attach my large pieces here. Get out I like to use these butterfly clips. Been using those for like the larger pieces, but you can use pins as well. So we'll do a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and obviously, like I've continued to say before, just making sure that these seam allowances stay going the direction that we have them. Make sure you're not stitching them accidentally in the opposite direction. We want everything to lay nice and flat. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these sewn on, and then I'll show you when it's all done. Alright, so I got the top half on there. So one thing I wanted to pop on, tell you to look out for, that is I feel like could have been a very easy mistake, is, so we see how we have the bottom strip here. So I have it upside down on purpose to show you the difference. So see how our F fabric triangle is in the upper left hand corner and upper right hand corner? We want that to be the same, except bottom left and bottom right. So make sure when you have your strips laid out for this that you have your triangles kind of like opposite of each other. You'll kind of see how it all comes together, but you want to make sure that all your F pieces are in the outer corners and then the E ones. So just pay attention to that when you put this together so you don't get mad at the end when you're like, dang it, because that would be very irritating. And other than that, very, very clear how to put it all together. So I'm going to go ahead and add our last strip, and then we're done with the centerpiece of our quilt. Alright guys, so that's all sewn together. So this is what the center of our quilt is going to look like. Oh my gosh, I already just want to wrap up with it. This is going to be so pretty. The cranium colorway is just such a fun time. I can't even, like, I can't say it enough. I'm absolutely in love. I'm so excited. So that completed our middle section of our quilt. So I'm gonna stop here and I'm going to pick back up, possibly in a different outfit because it might be tomorrow. Pick back up and then we will start doing the sides of our quilt. And then everything will be connected together and we will have our quilt all finished. 10 months of clues and we're finally seeing what it's looking like. So very pumped. So I will be right back, probably in a different outfit, and we will continue and we'll start doing the sides of our quilt. All right, see you soon. Alright guys, so we are going to be working on the sides of our quilt now. So this is the portion that we did, this is the whole center of the quilt. So next we're going to be moving on to the side. So I'm actually going to just gently put this to the side as we work on our side pieces. Alright, so we're going to be needing sections 4A, 6, and 7A for this. So I'm going to go ahead and go through my clues here, get out what I need, and then we'll put together our next step. Okay, so I have all my pieces out for our next step. So this is going to be a very easy step for us. So we're going to make 2 identical pieces. We're going to be taking a piece of 7A and a piece of 4A and putting those to the top and bottom of piece number 6. So I'm going to just set these to the side. 7A and 4A are identical. You should have a C fabric rectangle to the left along with these little rectangles on the side, on the right side. And all we're going to be doing is creating a long strip where we're putting 4A, 6, 7A. That's all we're doing. We're going to be doing that twice with the remaining 3 pieces that we have. So we'll go ahead and we'll join them right sides together, do a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then we'll go ahead and attach the bottom and we'll just do that twice. So let me get these sewn together. All right, so once those pieces are sewn together, we have a piece that looks like this. And so they want you to press your seam allowances towards the bottom. So that's what I did on each part. So I'm just gonna go ahead and repeat those same steps again with the remaining 3 pieces. And then we'll be able to attach our sides to our centerpiece of our quilt. So let me get these finished and I'll show you what they look like. All right, so now that we have 2 of these identical strips, we are going to attach them to the sides of our quilt. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab the center. I need a bigger table. All right, let's see. Alrighty, so you can already tell where we're going to be connecting these pieces because we have the rest of it. So I'm going to go ahead and show you one side since my table isn't really big enough to display the whole thing. So we have, let's see, make some more room. All right, so we have sides of our quilt and you'll see how that all is going to connect. So it creates that beautiful little block right there. So we're just going to be doing that on each side because you'll see it's identical on the other side as well, and it's going to finish that block. So we're just going to go ahead and if you have to, you can trim up the sides of this to lay a little bit more flat. I do have like an area here that is like maybe less than a 1/4 inch over from the rest. So if you need to trim up where you have to, go ahead and do that. But we're just going to be doing this right sides together. And we're going to be doing a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And this is a big piece. And you see a lot of these seam allowances that we have pressed in the past. They're all going different directions. So when you're sewing this strip together, like I've been saying all along, pay attention, take your time when you're sewing to make sure that none of this is getting folded backwards with a stitch or any of that. You want it to lay nice and flat. It'll just be easier for pressing and for a nice finish. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance and then we'll press it open and I will show you what that looks like before we do the other side. All right, so now that I have that one side sewn on, you can see how it's looking so far. It just is coming together so smoothly and so beautifully. I'm so excited. So we're gonna go ahead, I'm actually just gonna turn this around so the other open side is on my table. And we're just gonna do the same exact thing. So we're gonna take the other strip that we did and we're gonna connect it to this side and go ahead and put them right sides together, 1/4 inch seam allowance. And we are done with the sides of our quilt. And then we'll be moving on to the tops and bottoms, which again is gonna be connecting just big pieces. So it honestly should go very quickly. So I'm gonna go ahead, get this sewn, show you what it looks like when it's all done with the sides, and then we'll move on to our remaining top and bottom portion of our quilt. All right, guys, so I have it flipped the other way. So the top and bottom to your guys' view is actually the sides that I just put on. So that is all finished there. So the next steps we're going to be doing are going to be the top and bottom of the quilt now. Isn't this just stunning though? Like, I just have to take a minute sometimes and just look as I go because I'm just obsessing over it the whole entire time. Okay, so I'm gonna put this to the side and we're gonna look at our directions and see what clues we need to get out next to finish the top and bottom portion. So it looks like we'll be joining 1, 3, 5B, and 9 together. So I'm gonna get my remaining clues out and laid out for you guys, and then we are going to be sewing together the top and bottom of our quilt. All right, so this is the remaining pieces of that we have left, the remaining clues. Look at the strings all over me. Life of a quilter right there. So we have the remaining pieces of our quilt ready to put together, and I just have to laugh for a second because you pull these out and you're looking at 3 and 9 and they're identical, but you don't ever remember doing that twice. Like I personally don't. I felt like every month was so unique. So it's really funny to me because they were so spaced out. Month 3 and month 9, it's kind of a ways away from each other. So you like forget. And so it's definitely good that they do that because it keeps you intrigued and everything. You don't feel like you're doing the same thing. But then at the end, you're like, oh, I have identical pieces here. So you're starting to see that we've really repeated ourselves and created this pattern all along and had no idea. It's a part of the mystery that's so fun. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be connecting, joining section 1 to the left and right of section 5B. So I'm going to go ahead and take a piece of section 1, and then we're going to be doing it to the left and right of section 5B, which is right here. And then take another one, and you're going to be creating that same block that we just had on the side of our the bottom or the sides of our quilt that we just did. So you'll see everything is starting to just really go together and match, and it's very simple. So let's go ahead and connect these first. So join section 1 to the left and right of B, making sure that fabrics B and E are towards the center, and then press your seam allowances towards the center. So let's go ahead and get this chunk together first. I'm going to go ahead, put right sides together, 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm going to do the same to the other side, creating this piece here. Then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so once you've combined the sides like that, you should have a piece that looks like this now. And then you're going to go ahead and you're going to grab a piece of section 3 and then a piece of section 9, which are identical, and you're going to be putting them on each side, on each end of those pieces you just sewed together. So it creates this really pretty pattern. So you have a block that has the F fabrics on the outside, and then a block that has the B fabrics in the inside, and then you have F fabrics again. So you can kind of see the only difference here is just the little rectangles that surround that D fabric in the center. So we're going to go ahead and sew this strip together, and then these are going to go on the bottom of our quilt. So go ahead and put them right sides together, 1/4 inch seam allowance, making sure your seam allowances that you have pressed are staying nice and flat, the direction they should be going. And then once the strip is done, we're going to repeat everything we just did with the remainder of the clues that we have left to complete our quilt. So pretty much this repeat itself, and then we're going to be sewing this to the top and bottom of our quilt. So let's go ahead and get this strip done, and then I'll show you what that looks like. All right, and so there is one portion of what's going to be either the top or bottom of our quilt. If you would like to, you can take a straight edge and kind of go down the edges to just trim them up a little bit to make everything nice and even, so it's a lot easier for you to attach to the bigger portion of your quilt. So I'm going to go ahead and put this to the side. Look how pretty. And I'm going to just repeat the same steps with my remaining clues. Let's put this over here. So like before, take this little strip here, put it in the middle. This is section 5B. And then take sections 1 that we have left, put them to the right and left, and then go ahead and sew those together. And then sew your pretty little squares to each end, and we will have our second strip here. And then we'll be able to add that to our quilt, and then we're just about done. Then the next step is literally just the strips, and so this is super exciting, guys. So go ahead and get this sewn up, and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, guys, so this is our section of our quilt. So we have our sides that we've sewn on, so we're going to be sewing to the top and bottom of the quilt now. So I'm going to go ahead and grab one of the strips that we just finished and show it to you guys on the bottom. Look how beautiful this is going to be, guys. Oh, I'm so excited. All right, so this strip, you're going to see how everything's just lining up so perfectly. So we're just going to simply put them right sides together and do it a 1/4 inch seam allowance. This is a long portion, so like I said, just take your time. Clip really well. Make sure that your seam allowances aren't getting folded when you're stitching. Same story. But these are our last 2 big sections before we sew on our exterior strips. So we're gonna go ahead and put those right sides together, and I'm gonna sew the top and bottom onto this quilt, and I will show you what this bad boy looks like when it's all done. So let me get that all sewn and clipped and everything like that, and then I will show you guys the finished product before we move on to our strips, which is our last step. So pretty excited. Look at how amazing this is, guys. Oh my gosh. I literally just dragged this into my husband's office and was like, look. Like, he has a home office right across the hall, and I was like, look what I did. And he was just like, what? Like, so amazing. So honestly, like, take a moment and just like pat yourself on the back, because like you did this. And if you guys have been doing this all along with me, like, it's crazy, and it's so rewarding and so fun, and I'm already like wanting to sign up for the next Puzzle Mystery Quilt because they literally made this so stinking easy. All right, so what we have left is we have 2 long C strips, and then we have 2 more C strips that are a little bit shorter. These are going to go on the sides and bottom and top of our quilt, and then we're going to go ahead and sew these fat strips around as well. So we're going to do the C skinny strips first, and then I can't even wait for this border. Like, look how beautiful that is. I'm so excited. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get we'll do the 2 shorter C strips to start, which will be the top and bottom of our quilt, because that is the shorter edge. And you will have a little bit of leftover on each strip, because Cotton Cuts is smart and they give you wiggle room to trim if you must. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to have to pull, so half of my quilt is going to be hanging off the table, but that's the only way I can see what I'm doing here. All right. So right sides together, 1/4 inch seam allowance. We're going to be sewing these strips. Yeah, there's a good 2 inches left over on each side. And we're going to be sewing at a 1/4 inch seam allowance along the whole edge, and then do it to the opposite side. And then the remaining strips we will do on the top and bottom right here. So I'm going to go ahead and get that sewn on there, get it pressed. Looks like they want you to press towards the outwards. So we're going to be pressing our seam allowances out towards the little C strip when we're done. we'll go ahead and get that sewn and clip it very carefully. Alright, so I added the C strips to the whole border of our quilt, and then I trimmed them down so everything's even, and now we're on to our final and last step of this. My belly is just covered in thread still. I love it. We are going to be adding the final step to our quilt, and that is these beautiful thick strips. I feel like they are just gonna tie everything together and they're gonna look so gorgeous. And then our quilt top is done. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna add these on, 1/4 inch seam allowance, right sides together. Again, you should have 2 shorter strips for the top and bottom, and then 2 longer strips for the sides, since the sides of the quilt are longer than the top and bottom. Then, once I have my strips done, I'm going to go ahead and lay this actually on my bed and bring you in there to film the rest of it, to kind of show you guys the finished quilt and quilt top and what it looks like. Me personally, to finish my quilt, I'm going to be taking this to a local sewing shop for like a long arm professional quilting job. This took 10 months and I'm so proud of it, and this is the biggest project I've ever done and the longest, so I really want it done just beautifully and professionally. So I will be going with my mama, who has done this with me through the whole thing. She did the skip bow pattern and it's gorgeous, so we're going to be taking those to a long arm to finish it off for the whole entire thing. But I will show you guys in a few minutes what the finished product looks like laid on my queen size bed, and I'm going to get these strips sewn on, and I couldn't be more excited. So I'm going to go get these sewn and I'll show you guys the finished product. Alright, I have you guys in my bedroom, and I laid my quilt out on my floor so you guys could get the full image here, and I am so pleased. It just turned out so beautiful. I can't believe the mystery is finally solved. So thank you guys so much for following along for the last 10 months for the Are You Game Puzzle Mystery Quilt with cotton cuts. It was seriously so fun. I really hope to do this again in the future. Not sure if it'll be me doing YouTube videos for it every single month, but I definitely will be doing another one through cotton cuts, because this was such a phenomenal, easy process. They made it just so simple, and honestly, even if you've never sewn before, I think that you are completely capable of doing something like this, and that is amazing. So this is the finished product. I am going to go get some batting and schedule myself a professional long arm quilting appointment, because I want this to just be done so beautifully. I've worked so hard. So thank you guys for watching. If you guys have any questions about anything with finishing it, please don't hesitate to reach out, comment below. Thank you again, Cotton Cuts, for letting me be a part of your Are You Game Puzzle Mystery Quilt, and I can tell you right now, it won't be my last. All right, guys, have a good one.